on 88.9 WEIU. Now, issues and attitudes.
Everybody, welcome. My microphone decided right before the show it would just go out. Hello, my name is Jeff Owens, director of WEIU. We have a full house today. We're going to be talking about food insecurity, poverty with folks from the Office of Civic Engagement. I got it right because I wrote it down. So we have, if you're watching on year 13, we have Alex Martens, Crystal Brown over here, Beth Gillespie, her husband, Professor Mike Gillespie.
Thank you.
And my co-host is here, Annalisa Haynes.
There I am.
There you go. So so it's a full house. We're gonna have a good time as we head into the holidays. It's always a good time to talk a little bit about food insecurity, maybe even some diet tips, whatever. But let's first talk about the words. When you hear food insecurity, Beth, that's something you don't always hear right off the together. So talk about food insecurity, and then we'll kind of go different ways.
Yeah, Michael is much more the expert in this area than I am. But when I'm talking with students, when we're going out to different places and doing volunteer events that impact local food insecurity and poverty issues, one of the things or ways that I explain what food insecurity is I say that I woke up this morning and I knew I was going to have breakfast. I knew that I was going to bring a healthy lunch to work, and that when I go home tonight, I will have a healthy dinner, and that the meals that I'm having throughout the day are going to fuel my body appropriately for all of the things that I want to do. And so food insecurity is when you don't know when that next meal is going to be and if it's going to be nutritionally adequate. So a college student, for example, may wake up and decide that a Red Bull and a bag of chips is a delicious breakfast, but it is not nutritionally adequate, right? But some people do that because that's what they want to do. But other people may do that because that's all they can afford to do, or grab a quick granola bar. And so it's that unknown of when is my next meal and is it going to be nutritionally adequate.
I'll let Michael add anything there.
Another way to think about it is you might be able to get food, and the food that you can get might be able to sustain you for a little while, but you might not be able to get it in socially acceptable ways. And so a lot of times food insecurity has to do with maybe getting food from a place that has a social stigma against it, like going to a food pantry or relying on food stamps, where while those are services that are provided or they're governmental subsidies that help people get food, a lot of times that's embarrassing for people, or there's a stigma against it. Another thing to think about is in things like dumpster diving, which it doesn't get talked about a lot, but it actually happens a lot more often than we would think in places like Charleston, Coles County, even off campus and on campus. Those types of things happen. So food insecurity really is about the risk factors around being able to sustain an adequate nutritional stock of food in socially acceptable ways.
Let's switch over. Alex over here, you are a student grad assistant inside the department, right?
I am.
Well, talk about when you hear food insecurities, and have you had any of those issues? Have you been here at Eastern?
I haven't had any of those issues myself, but I can definitely say from experience that I do know people that even within my cohort that struggle with knowing where they're going to get their next meals, and that the stigma of going to the food bank definitely does weigh on somebody's mind, especially if they're not necessarily used to that.
So let's say that there's a student on campus, or even somebody in the community that someone knows. What is the best way that you can kind of help them and guide them to get over the stigma that Michael was talking about, but to allow them to find that nutritious food that's going to help them survive day to day?
Well, usually what I talk about is you can't be really overly pushy with people because of that stigma, but an education or empowerment sort of way would be to just offer up some resources. There's lists available through the CIVO and other resources on campus to be able to just kind of say, hey, if you're struggling, you know anybody else is struggling, here's just some things. Carry this sheet around with you. If you need some food, you need some clothing, you need some help with something else, there's always going to be a resource available to you.
Okay.
And that's one of the best ways to do it, is don't assume that they need help, but offer, and just in the general say, hey, there's all these great things. If you know anybody needs help, you never know who you're going to help out.
All right.
So I actually have two questions. For starters, do we know what the demographic in Coles County is when it comes to people who might have this food insecurity? And also, I noticed that there was an email sent out to everyone on campus for I believe it was a survey. about food insecurity. So those are the two questions. What is that email about? And then what is is demographic the right word to describe how many people might suffer from this?
Michael off mic said he had stats. So
Yeah,
what do you
I
mean?
was looking at this.
That's my game. Well, first off, the email is about a research study that I'm doing where I've been surveying for the past couple years the student body, all enrolled students, both undergraduate and graduate. Last year I did it, completed that last fall. I did a follow-up survey in the spring, which I'm still working on, but the fall one is the big one that I really focus on in the beginning of the school year. And then the one that got sent out this year is actually going to close out the end of this week. And so it goes out to all of the undergraduate and graduate students on campus. And so what we know from the data that we got last year is about 40% of the students on campus show enough risk factors to be deemed food insecure. So if you think about it in real terms, it's about 2 in every 5 students. And that's risk factors. That doesn't mean that they are. There might be some other accessible means to get some help, but generally it means that they exude enough of the risk factors that we should have them on our radar and be doing things to help them out. In terms of Coles County, another thing that I do is I look at data that's released by the Census Bureau every year. And demographics, when you ask that, I assume that you're asking about sort of the people in certain social categories that we should look at. Usually food insecurity is tied to things like economic income, social support systems, family structure, those types of things. In the general, we know that food insecurity in the county is about 41%, 41.3%, which is just about on par with what we see on campus as well. But as soon as family structures start to change, including families with children, we see that jump to almost half. So almost half of the families with children in the county are food insecure. We have a really low median household income in the county, which also plays into that. And so we have an elevated poverty rate. We've been on the watch list from the state Department of Human Services for several years, and other groups that kind of focus on different areas around the state. And so that data is usually released in December. It's sort of my early Christmas present. So I get really excited that first week of December when my data is released by the Census Bureau, so I'll have updates for that as well.
So, but just to hit or get that point across, families, you mentioned that it's like more than half of the families here in Charleston, almost half.
Yeah.
So those are kids that are going without meals, right? Or
Kids
without.
are at risk. Yeah, parents are at risk. Usually, what we see is that parents will sacrifice for their children, and so they'll try to get their kids enough meals, and the parents will have maybe a meal and a half. Oftentimes, these children do get some kind of support through the school system, whether it's free or reduced lunch, which usually helps out. Of course, that breaks down during holidays and over the summer when there's not those resources available, but students can, based on their parents' income, qualify for free and reduced lunch in the schools as well. So if you think about it, when families have kids are expensive, and what we know is
well aware of that.
That is a tremendous risk factor, especially in a county like ours. That doesn't have the same level of economic resources for everybody, where it's going to have a substantial impact.
Let's pull Crystal in for a minute, and then for the Office of Civil Engagement, what do you do in terms of getting the word out and putting on events to kind of illuminate this problem, as well as let some of the college students know what they can do?
We do a lot of things throughout the year. I mean, we try to educate students through just our newsletter and doing programming. I'll let Alex talk in a minute about our Hunger Action Month. So we spend the entire month in November doing programs to raise awareness about this and educate our students, as well as give them opportunities to go out and volunteer, whether it's doing a canned food drive, going out to the Charleston Food Pantry and volunteering their time so they can see from the other side the impact that we're making to help those families in need. And then on top of that, we also, like Michael alluded to earlier, we want to provide those resources to our students on campus, so letting them know what resources are out there if they need support. We do have 3 pantries here in town that can support our students if they have a need. The Charleston Food Pantry, which is open Monday, Wednesday, Friday afternoons, as well as Thursday evenings. And we're happy to help provide transportation to get volunteers and our students there if they need that. There's also the Standing Stone Carpenter's Table Food Pantry that's open anytime their store is open. And then we have the Newman Center Food Pantry here right off campus. It's open Monday, afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, and Friday mornings.
Okay. Are you going to add that, Alex?
Yeah, so some of the events that we have going on for Hunger Action Month, just going on with that is like the first one is the Pie Celeb. So like for that event, we're not only going to try to bring awareness for food insecurity, but also try to raise some of the funds for some of the food pantries and food banks that were mentioned by Crystal.
Okay. Now I know that you and Crystal, we're going to talk about. You talked about a little bit of some of the stuff I want to talk about. When the Charleston Food Pantry, the Mattoon Food Pantry, their soup stop, and all the things. Mm-hmm. Now, to get to make them fully stocked and so that they can provide to the folks that we're talking about today, what's the best way somebody can help? Is it financial? Is it donate hours? Is it money and food, time, or can they do a little bit of everything?
They can do whatever works best for them in their budget or their time. Time is great if they've got that resource, because it takes a lot of volunteers to operate the pantries. They are primarily, if not 100% run. If they do have financial means, it is better to give money instead of food. If you buy a can of green beans for $1 at the store, that's one can that you're providing to a family. But if you give that $1 to the food pantry, they can turn that around and buy $10 worth of food from the food bank. So it goes a lot farther.
It seems to me that I was thinking back when I was at Eastern again, I might have been one of the lucky ones that always had access to food, or at least if I had to call home or whatever. But is it hard for an Eastern student maybe to go to one of these things? Because it seems to me that would be the stigma that Michael talked about earlier. It would be tough for me, or tough for I think of the students we work with, to go, hey, if you don't have any money to go to one of these things, how do you convince them that's the best way, or how do they convince themselves? Might be a better way to ask that.
So like Crystal said, we take volunteers to the Charleston Food Pantry every Thursday night year round. So we are there 51 weeks a year, because obviously the food pantry is closed on Thanksgiving. But one of the things that we work really hard to do is to have it be a positive volunteer experience, and we talk about the impact that we're making. So like last week we served 21 families, and there were 83 people in those 21 families. And so at the end, once we had served everybody and taken care of everything, we said this is the impact that we had. We helped put food on the table for 83 people. And then we say, we know that you as a college student are not making $1 million, and they usually laugh at that and say, yeah, you're right. And we talk about the income guidelines and say, if you're interested in getting a box of food tonight, you are more than welcome to do that. And so we've spent 2 hours building a relationship with these students. Some of them are new, some of them come back frequently throughout the semester, but because we have that relationship and because they've seen that we haven't judged anyone who's come there, we've treated everyone with kindness and respect, they know that they're going to have that same experience with us. And a lot of the students start making comments like, yeah, this really makes a huge difference to me. Thank you so much. And so that's a huge part of what we're trying to accomplish, so that we can help students understand that this is a resource to help put food on the table for people in our community, and that they are someone in the community that can benefit from that.
So kind of volunteering kind of gets them in the door, and maybe that eases them in to make, hey, I'm one of these students who needs the help. I never thought about it that way, so that's kind of neat. You want to say something? Look like Michael?
I was just going to add, I think relationships are one of the important things, and just building rapport with people and having them understand that what they might be going through, or understanding sort of what's happening around them, is going to be an important factor to facilitating their own ability to go out and even ask for help. And I know I don't get to go to the food pantries, but I am known as sort of like the poverty guy, the food insecurity guy, and that in and of itself is an amazing thing, because I've been approached by students who I haven't had any other interaction with, who have maybe seen my survey or seen me speak out or read something in the newspaper and just come up to me and said, hey, I'm hungry, do you have anything, how can I get some help? And it's been a tremendous way to build relationships, as well as just kind of keep getting the word out. One of the things that we did in the fall, leading up to the fall, is I was contacted by the admissions office, and they had been getting a lot of questions from parents and students who were coming in the fall, whether they were freshmen or they were returning students, asking, what are some resources that my student can have? We're low income. I'm afraid that there might be some issues there in terms of getting food, or maybe some clothing and those sorts of things. And so I went over and sat with the admissions staff one morning, and we put together an entire list and resource packet that went out in all the prowl packets, the this year, just to kind of get that stuff out. And that stuff, even if they recycle that or something happens, at least if it catches an eyeball and it kind of gets people's imagination going later on down the road, they might remember that and be able to do that too. So the relationship part, both with the volunteers, but just the general know-how, I think is really important. And I think it is going to hopefully, at least from my perspective, one of the things I would like to see is really build a good culture of diversity and bringing people into these issues around campus, so that that stigma breaks down and students are comfortable asking for it if and when they need it.
What started your passion for this when you think about going at poverty and food insecurity? I mean, where did that come from?
I think it's been something that's always been a part of me. I grew up in the family on the southwest side of Detroit, and we were a pretty blue-collar family, and I saw it all around me. Fortunately, my family didn't experience a lot of that, but a lot of my friends did, and a lot of the people that I interacted with did on a daily basis. And then after Beth and I got married and I was in graduate school, we lived in a pretty poor place in Michigan, in central Michigan, called Jackson, is the name of the city, but also the name of the county. It was right during when all of the housing crisis went through, and we actually saw just blocks and blocks of that city, those yellow signs go up in front of houses where they're going to be repossessed and being auctioned off. And as I got more intellectually interested in it, it's just something that always kind of pulled at my heartstrings. And so both intellectually and personally, it's just kind of been something that's always been there that I've been curious about, and I sort of feel like it's my mission to keep uncovering and talking about it.
I think what surprised me so much when you say that, we think there's about around 7,500 students here at Eastern, and a couple thousand of them each day don't know if they're going to get enough food. To me, that's the one thing that I cannot get anything else to go through my mind, because you don't think about it until you're forced to think about it.
I think what people forget about is the students that live off campus. On campus you do have those resources. You have the dining halls, and of course people complain, but at least it's food. But I definitely feel for the kids that have to survive off campus, because it's hard.
When you said dining halls, these two each gave a look. I don't want to disparage the dining halls, but you guys gave a look that I would like to know what you're going through your mind.
Our dining halls are spectacular, but if a family, college is crazy expensive, and one of the only costs that's controllable is the amount of meal plans you get, right? Like, housing is a fixed cost, classes are a fixed cost per course, but you can choose. Do you want an unlimited meal plan, which, and I don't know what the statistics are, but is X amount of money, or do you want 15 meals a week? Do you want 12 meals a week in the dining hall, or do you only want 7? And if money is a huge issue, which we know it is for a lot of our students, the difference between the unlimited cost and the 7 meal plan cost is going to feel really significant. And they may not be forward thinking at that point, saying, okay, well, if I'm only getting 7 meals a week in the dining hall, there's 14 other meals each week that I have to then either go without or figure out some kind of substitute, which then gets us right back into that food insecurity issue. Again, if they're grabbing a bag of chips and a soda for breakfast on their way to their first class, then they're experiencing that food insecurity. So.
And on top of the unhealthiness of a bag of chips and a
Now, I'm not judging, because I ate a lot of really unhealthy things when I was in college as well, but
it catches up to you after a while, though.
It does, yes. So that's the hard part. The dining halls are phenomenal, but we know that a majority of students who are living on campus do not have access to 21 meals each week in the dining halls.
Let's touch base on homeless, too, as I know you work with the PAD shelter. I think they're changing their name, or it has changed the name, or...
It's in the process.
I believe it's changed. Yeah.
So, talk a little bit about what you do and to help out the homeless situation, because people also, up until a few years ago, we really didn't think we had a problem in Coles County, and then all of a sudden the homeless shelter realized that there is this whole other side of the Coles County that we didn't know about, and it's been eliminated big time by Michael and the gang over there.
Yeah, they're doing great work over there. I know that I think their new building should be opening relatively soon. We haven't been doing a ton of work with them while they've been transitioning from their old facility to their new one, but we are excited to hopefully get back over there there. And in the past, what we've done is send students over to help prepare meals for the residents that are using pads as a resource. So we're excited to explore doing that again once they're in their
I
new
can't think
spot.
of what he's going to call it now. That's just the Haven. Thank you. I knew you would know.
But there's also a really big support system too for homeless veterans through the Salvation Army, where they've got a program when they identify veterans that are homeless to help within 30 days get them into a safe space that's theirs and is a place to live. So.
Let's talk a little bit about students out there who hopefully listening are going to hear about this show through any way they can. How can they best be involved and take us through the process? If someone says they want to come to Crystal or you Beth, and say I want to get involved and I want to give back to the university that's doing so much for me, and then take them through the steps of where they can become one of these people that are helping out at a shelter or a food pantry or whatever.
I'll talk about the food pantries, and then you want to talk about the mobile food pantries, and okay. Sorry, a little bit of game planning there on the fly.
Right. This show is live and unprepared. I mean, what do you want to call it? We wing it.
Unscripted.
That's what we like to do. It's more fun that way.
So like I said, every Thursday night we take 6 volunteers to the Charleston Food Pantry. So that could be a great way to get involved and engaged with our office, do some good, but also get a feel for what it's like. One of the things that we work really hard to do with our student volunteers is to help them understand the impact of their time that they've given. And we do talk a lot about how many families that we've served, and when you're literally handing food to somebody, like, it's kind of impossible to walk away from that not understanding the difference that you've made. But that could be a great way for just 2 hours. It's not a ton of time you have to give, but that's a great way to get engaged with us. And we also have started a new partnership with the Newman Center. The Newman Center has had a food pantry for over a year. That's for anybody who has a Panther card, student, faculty, or staff. And you can go over there once a week. And like Crystal said, they're open 3 different times during the week and get food. So we're really excited about helping them expand their hours this fall. With
And they had to have what? They had to have their Panther.
You just have to have your Panther card. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah. Have your Panther card, and they'll ask if you live on campus or off, and then that's it. And then you can get your food and keep going with your day. And like I said, you can go there once a week to get food. So, but because of Michael's data, we were really wanting to help see how we could support more students and get food on the table for more people.
That's good.
Yeah, last year the Newman Center was just doing it 1 day a week for about an hour and a half, and so their office, these 2 women here, did an amazing job partnering with them, being able to expand services, doing public relations, getting the word out, and all that sort of thing to make it a bigger, more viable resource for the campus. Yeah.
Crystal, talk about the mobile stuff?
Yeah, we also partner with the EIU Food Bank out of Champaign. They do mobile food pantries on Saturday mornings in the 22 counties they serve across the state of Illinois. And we'll do kind of what we do at the Charleston Food Pantry, but on a much larger scale. They'll go out to, say, a fire department in a small farming community, set up food, and then have families come through and get their meals. And we went just this past Saturday and took a group of about 15 students to Paris, Illinois, and within an hour time served over 130 families.
Holy wow.
So, I mean, most of these food pantries, we are serving 115 to 150 families in about a 2-hour time span. Our time that our student volunteers do give, including travel, is about 4.5, 5 hours on a Saturday morning to make a difference.
There you go.
But they love it. One of the comments that we heard this weekend, because when we got to the fire station in Paris, I would say probably 75 families were already there waiting for the mobile food pantry to open. And our students just kept saying, I had no idea that this many people were struggling, So I think if you can put a face to it, and put a face to that somebody who's hungry looks like me, then we can go back and do something against that stigma. Because if I'm hungry, if this person who looks like me is also hungry, that makes me feel less alone in it. And all of these people are being kind and respectful and offering some kind of help. So it really is pretty powerful to watch our students make that connection.
It is interesting because I think our food pantry volunteer opportunities are one of the ones that fill up the fastest.
There you go. We have a few minutes left. I didn't want to skip any topics or anything. Is there anything that anybody wants to talk about or get out before as we continue this discussion about poverty and food insecurity here in the Coles County EIU area?
Yeah. So Michael helped start Hunger Action Month originally. So if you want to just give a little bit of history with that, and then Alex can talk about some of the events.
And that's coming up next month, right? November, you said?
Yeah.
This week.
Yeah, true.
So we started Hunger Action Month, I don't even know how long ago, 6 years ago maybe, and we chose November for Hunger Action Month here on campus. There's a National Hunger Action Month through Feeding America, which is the National Association of Food Banks, which happens in September, and then Childhood Hunger Month is October. So we picked November primarily because it's Thanksgiving. It's the month of Thanksgiving, and so one of the things that we really wanted to do was do some really intensive programming and education, outreach, empowerment to the campus community, and then they have the week of Thanksgiving to go home, maybe share what they've learned, maybe have a different level of appreciation for that meal that they're going to have and that time spent with family, but then also kind of spread the word out as well. And so we do, over the years, we've done all sorts of different activities, anywhere from collecting canned goods to showing documentaries, having public forums, throwing pies at people's faces, collecting food at football games, all sorts of different things. And so I'm really excited about what's going to happen this year, because I think it's after a couple years where Hunger Action Month kind of it was there, but it was needed some new energy. I'm excited for what Alex is kind of putting together for this year. We're going to get that word out and really do some good stuff.
Alex, I think that was a segue to you, my friend.
Yeah, so I am truly excited to be kind of leading the way with Hunger Action Month. So with this month, there's going to be a number of new partnerships that haven't taken place in the past before. We're still keeping a lot of the successful events that have taken place before, but some of those that are coming up real soon. So as I mentioned earlier, on November 1st from 11 a.m. to 1 in the library quad, we're going to be doing to where you can do a pie celeb, and we've had a number of people from housing. Dr. Glassman's going to be there, some volunteers from EIU Athletics, so super excited for that. So hopefully that will bring in some extra funds. We also will be on November 5th adding more of an education portion to it. Dr. Gillespie is actually going to be speaking at 5 o'clock in Downtown Hall in the lecture hall. So he'll be giving a presentation talking about food insecurity in Coles County and in Eastern Illinois. I mentioned earlier, too, with some of the new partnerships, I'm really excited. We launched a new program called HUA, which stands for Huddle Up Against Hunger, where we're partnering up with EIU Athletics. And so there's already been a few matches, but some of the new ones that have been coming up, we have the women's volleyball game on November 9th, where we're encouraging all the fans, students, parents to bring out either donations or canned food goods. So that is on November 9th. And then we also have the EIU football game on the 10th as well.
Okay, very interesting. Now, I'll put you on the spot just for a second, because when you think about the University of Eastern Illinois' size and then some of the stats that you were throwing out there with who's going hungry and who has food insecurity and things like that, have you done any studies, or has there been relative studies to schools similar to our size across Illinois, or maybe even the central part of the states that match up? I know we only have about a minute left, but just to throw that out there.
One of the downfalls of doing this research is there's not been a national study on campus food insecurity, but there's been studies like mine, which is just focused on one campus over multiple years. And generally across the country, it's between 30 and 40%. So we're at the upper end of that in terms, and that goes across sizes. I mean, there's hunger problems at Harvard and there's hunger problems at community colleges. And so it really, hunger and the campus communities, college students, it doesn't discriminate. And that's probably one of the hardest things to swallow, is that, I mean, this is a special population. Food insecurity is higher than in the general population on college campuses. And so I don't want to say, hey, we're kind of normal, but it shouldn't be normal. That
it shouldn't be that high. It doesn't seem like,
it shouldn't
for sure.
be that high either. So.
All right, we got 25 seconds left. Best way to reach Beth or Crystal there?
Give us a call, 581-3967. Shoot us an email at volunteer@eiu.edu, or come see us. We're on the 3rd floor of the Union.
And Alicia, I didn't, any 10 seconds? Any thoughts?
Don't be ashamed.
There you go. Well, appreciate you coming in. Have a great holiday season, everyone, and have a great Hunger Action Month.
Happy Hunger Action Month.
There you go. So everybody have a great day. This is HitMix 88.9 WEIU, your 13 TV, WEIU TV as well. Everybody have a great day.